We were talking about converting between degrees and radians, okay? When you're converting between degrees and radians, it's a simple ratio and it's reciprocal. That ratio that we use to go from degrees to radians is pi over 180, okay? Pi over 180. To go from radians to degrees, we're going to reciprocate. Reciprocate means we're doing what with that fraction? Flipping. That's it. That's all you're doing, okay? Remember I told you to remember that if I'm going from D to R, what I'm changing is in the denominator. And so therefore my degrees are in the denominator. If I'm going from radians to degrees, what I'm changing is in the denominator. And that's because it's going to eliminate, it's going to go away, right? Because that's what I'm changing. All right, so then we did the example of to find the radian measure of 60 degrees, we had 60 times pi over 180. I can turn any number into a fraction by putting it over 1, correct? So that's 60 over 1. I cross out the zeros because that's divided by 10. And we're left with 6 pi over 18. 6 and 18 reduced down to 1 and 3, which is pi over 3, okay? Now we're going to do it again. So here we have 85 degrees to radians. Because I'm going from degrees to radians, I'm using pi over 180. So we have 85. And again, I can turn any number into a fraction by putting it over 1. All right, 85 and 180. I'm going to reduce them in parts, like slowly but surely. I can reduce them both by 5, correct? I can reduce both by 5. 85 divided by 5 is 17. 180 divided by 5 is 36. Can I reduce any more? Nope. So therefore, the exact answer is 17 pi over 36 radians. Notice that for both of these, I did not write radians, okay? It is typically implied when there is a pi symbol referring to angles that this is in radians. If it makes your heart feel better, you can write RAD. But it is implied that radians are there when the pi is present. Okay, so now we're going to go the other way. So this one, it says to convert 2.5 radians to degrees. So 2.5, so that we can practice using it in simplified form, we're going to change that to an improper fraction, okay? So how do I convert 2.5 to an improper fraction? Remember, 2.5 equals 2 and a half, right? Did your teacher teach you as around the world with fractions? Maybe, where you convert 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. So the improper fraction is 5 over 2. Does that ring any bells? Around the world fractions? I surely can. So to go from a decimal to a mixed number means you're a combination of a fraction and a whole number, correct? To go from a mixed number to an improper fraction, meaning that the numerator is greater than the denominator, my teacher taught it to us as around the world with fractions. So you start at the denominator and you're going to multiply. 2 times 2 is 4. Your next stop is to add. 4 plus 1 is 5. And you come back home to 2. So therefore, 2.5 as an improper is 5 over 2. That's because 5 divided by 2 is 2 with a remainder of 1. Yay, nay, maybe so. Okay. All right. So now that I have that improper fraction, I'm going to now multiply. I'm going from radians to degrees. So I'm using 180 over pi. So I'm going to be multiplying by 180 over pi. So multiplying by 180 over pi, I can pre-reduce is what I like to do. Therefore, I'm not working with two large numbers. 2 and 180 can reduce down to 1 and 90, right? Yeah. 5 times 9 is 45. Add that 0 on there. So my exact answer would be 450 pi degrees. That's your exact answer. Does that make sense? However, most of the times they're not going to want it written in that form. They want, if I'm asking you for a degree, I'm asking you for to either write it in decimals or degrees and minutes. Okay. Which we'll talk about maybe a little later. But in decimal form. So you just put this in the calculator. So I would take 450 and divide it by pi to get my approximate value of my. So approximate in the handy dandy calculadora. Hey, Sylvie. Because you're not doing sine, cosine, or tangent, a trig function, it doesn't matter if you're in radians or degrees. You're just dividing. 450 divided by second pi here. I get 143.239. Okay. Remember, for AP, we round to the nearest 3 decimal places, unless stated otherwise. So we got 143.239 degrees. Okay, if the question says round to the nearest whole degree, then you just put 143. Does that make sense? Unless it states for us to do so, we round to the nearest 3 decimal place. All right, how do we feel? I wasn't sure. We didn't do that, right? We didn't talk about any of that. Now we have officially finished part B.